Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Digital Boss Boardroom, where we share valuable and actionable knowledge specifically for our fellow small business owners to help you effectively market and manage your small business while creating a little bit of joy in this crazy entrepreneurial journey that we are all on. I'm your host, Bobbi Baehne, and this episode is brought to you by the digital marketing experts at Think Big Go Local. I would love to connect with everybody. So check the show notes or the description in this video, and you'll find links to connect with us anywhere. And be sure to stay till the end. And you know the routine: like, comment, subscribe, share this so you don't miss anything coming up in the future. All right, so let's get to this. So today we're going to be talking about a topic I have never actually never talked about in the past before. And I'm getting a little message here. Gotta send a little text message real quick. So hold on. We're going to have to bring our guest back on here real quick. You know, the joys of going live. The joys of going live. Yep. And okay, so while we're getting him logged back in here, he's back. I want to introduce my next guest. His name is Jason Lee, and we're going to be talking. He is a security expert. So here's what I know. Not actually a ton. He's going to tell us more about what he does. But the other day, he was putting together a video, needed a little bit of expert support as he was getting this created. So him and his wife came over, we got their video done, and I had the pleasure of listening to him do his presentation. It was a short presentation he was giving, and was blown away by just his deep knowledge and expertise in all things that have to do with safety, security, crisis management, interviews, problems that arise, things with employees, things with customers, theft. I mean, you name it, he's been through it. So let's bring him on. I'm going to let him give you a little bit of background, and then we're going to dive into some tips that he's got to share specifically for small business owners on how to make sure you are, as he told me earlier, kind of doing your homework so that you can enjoy your business. And if bad things come about, you know how to handle them. So, Kent, let's bring Jason in. Hey, Jason, how are you?
I'm fine. Good afternoon. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. So you even rearranged the camera again, it looks like. Looks good. All right. So I just did a little brief introduction about your background, but I would love if you would expand upon it a little bit, because I know it's very in depth, and let people know kind of what you've been up to the last few decades.
Sure. Well, again, thanks for the opportunity to be here and speak with everybody. I have been in the retail operations security field for about 35 years now, different places around the country. I've worked internationally. I've worked in the UK, worked in Canada, consulted in Saudi Arabia and the UAE a little bit, but primarily in the areas of retail operations. Here, this will date me, Blockbuster Video back in the day. Wow, what a difference. So dealing with a lot of the technologies and things that were coming up in the safety and security world for retail, kind of as they were building up and going forward. I've worked for multiple retailers across the country, big box, small box, specialty, you name it. Talked to people about it, and also taught classes on everything from OSHA safety and compliance to interviewing to how to staff your business properly, things like that. All of those things that apply into the security world, as well as developing action plans. That's something I hope we'll talk a little bit about later, is how to protect your business and how to get ready for when things, not if they happen, but when they do happen, so you're ready to deal with it.
And, you know, and I want to mention too, so Jason and I sit on a board of directors for a nonprofit together. And I knew Jason's background when he came in, but some of the things that we've leaned on you for your expertise are things that I didn't actually truly expect to have, you know, things that would come up, that we would have somebody that really is offering tremendous value to us because of your expertise. So just a few things, just random things. One, when we do fundraising events, so we're planning a fundraising event, it was going to be outside. There's going to be a lot of traffic. Little did I know that we needed to have a safety plan in place to manage that traffic, make sure people were safe. And that was the kind of thing that you are an absolute expert in putting together pulling all the different law enforcements together that we may need, what needs to be present, like any business that's doing any kind of an event. I know we've done events in the past that never really crossed my mind. And had something happened, boy, would I have been sorry that we didn't have a plan ahead of time for how do we mitigate things that may come up. So events was one thing. Also in our nonprofit, we have had issues where we kind of recently had a medical issue happen. And again, really didn't have the plan we should have had in place as far as what should be available, what's the process to follow, what sorts of things do we need to have in that location to be able to handle an emergency. So I think whatever type of business you have, there are things that could come up. And if you haven't planned for them, one, you're not doing a great service. If it's a client of yours and they're in your waiting room and something comes up and you can't handle it, think about what that makes you look like later. Not with any poor intention or anything like that, but this stuff can really set you apart just by how thoughtful you've been about your responsibility as a business owner. So those are just a few things that I know have kind of popped up as you and I have worked together that I was like, yeah, never really thought of that. Thank goodness he's here. And I know in your day-to-day work, a lot of times those things are like the cakewalk, right? Like I know when we talk often, Jason does a lot bigger things that he doesn't always talk about because he feels like the bad guy. He's always saying, I'm the bad guy to everybody. But I don't know if that's anything you want to go into. But anyways, just as a small business owner myself, you've made me rethink things that we should have had in place. Today we're working from home, and that does not evade, some sort of crisis coming up, especially like with cybersecurity and other things you talked about. But when we had our physical office and we were doing big events at local bars and things like that, there's a lot of things that I wish I would have had in place. And just thank goodness, that I got lucky.
Yeah, so much of business these days, let's face it, we look at cybersecurity. We're always talking about intrusions, data intrusions. I mean, they're happening every day. I mean, look at what happened, who knows, with AT&T yesterday, what's happening right now with United Healthcare. There's many different breaches and things that occur, and these are important and they're critical. And as for your small business, or any large business for that matter, you need to have a plan to respond to it. However, something that has fallen by the wayside a little bit is the knowledge of physical plant security. What am I doing to keep my employees and my customers safe? What am I doing to keep these people in a functioning state so where they can come back and shop with me tomorrow or work for me tomorrow? So there's a few things you want to think about in this line. And the first of these is always the people you bring on board. So, people always ask, why does the safety or security guy talk about hiring or HR type of things, human resource type of things? Simply for this: you hire your sales, you hire your losses, you hire your community presence, you hire your community reputation. So what is the first thing I always talk about in the classes I've taught over the years is, what does it look like when someone comes into your business and asks for a job application? Or as you're hiring, where are you recruiting from? What are you looking for in these people? I'm not saying you have to go through a Central Intelligence Agency level background check, things to that effect. But you do want to have a process of what that looks like and really deep dive into some of these pieces by either asking questions or what have you. And there's a whole piece on how to do job interviews and all that kind of thing. I know that I teach out there in the world, but it's just important to have that basic nugget in place. So then let's say you've got your people set up. How are you going to protect them? If you have an office of over 10 people, do you have an emergency action plan as mandated by OSHA? And this emergency action plan could be in case of fire, depending on your business, if you work with any type of chemical, if you work with any type of industry, things about what happens when the equipment fails.
So let me ask you a quick question, just out of my own ignorance. Does OSHA requirements apply to every business that is functioning, or only certain types of businesses? Like, does everybody that has a physical location need to have that plan?
Yeah, depending on the amount of employees.
Okay.
That's your biggest piece, is how many employees you have. number one, it's always good to set up one of these plans. Okay. It is always something you want to do, mandated, legal or not. It comes into the category of the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Many studies have shown that for retention of employees, for overall satisfaction with the job, so they don't cause you other problems, having these type of training plans and just other general training plans in place goes a long way to prevent, let's just say, disgruntled employees who may want to cause you harm in one way or another, either through direct action or apathy, one of the two.
Yeah.
So having that in place is critical. The level of it, of course, depends on your industry, depends on what you're doing and how many people you do have, how it's communicated. But it's something that you need to keep in your eyes, keep in sight. And it could be, regretfully, let's face it, we live in a world where, our children are going through these kind of drills at school, but active shooter, what to do, any kind of workplace violence situation, having those conversations, let's face it, they're hard. They're hard conversations. They're not pleasant. They're not easy. But as I like to say, in any kind of business, let's face it, there's 4 things you do. You take care of your customers, you take their money to the bank, you do your chores, and you do projects. That's all you do. Anybody else who tries to blow it up from that is smoke and mirrors. But this falls under the chores. You can do projects, which is resetting your building, acquiring new business. All that's great, but you still got to get your chores done.
Yeah, you are so correct. So correct. And even in my business, I talk about that too. Like, you can post the content, do all this, but if you don't have it written down, if you don't have a plan. So yeah, there's always homework involved in putting something valuable together to, push out to your customers or your employees.
And especially right now with OSHA is about to be doing a lot more visits, inspections, things to that effect. For example, things that used to be where, say, an OSHA inspection comes into your business and you've got 2 or 3 things wrong. They might write you citation for one of them. Not anymore. They will write you for all of them individually. And Bobbi, you want to take a guess how much the individual citation can be in dollars?
I don't want to know, but I'm going to go with a lot.
Yeah, about $16,000.
Oh gosh.
So and there are retailers right now that have been sued after one visit, not sued, excuse me, but cited for $2 and $3 million based on what they found in these locations. Now, that's the part that gets your attention. You kind of go, whoa. And hopefully we can design a plan. You can design a plan to avoid that from happening, because it's actually very simple to do once it's done.
And, these conversations are so important, because one thing that I see, I just gave a presentation about website accessibility to a group of business owners that all had a website, and not one of them, it was not accessible to an individual with any type of disability. And yet there's this mentality that's so prevalent that it won't happen to me. It won't happen in my location. Nobody will turn me in. It's not worth the extra, $400 a year. Like, how do you break through that to businesses, and really make them realize, like, really what the risk is, and for what might take a few hours to put together, what could happen to your business if you don't do it and something goes wrong?
Well, the number one thing, of course, if you do get cited in any of these areas, you are talking upwards of tens of thousands of dollars right off the bat. But however, let's go beyond that. Do you really want your business known for being someone who did not take care of this, was not compliant for that? The ancillary costs that can come through with not following through on these plans can be staggering, just in perception. Let's face it, life these days is perception. And
that is such a good point. Such a good point.
It is absolutely what it is. So why not give them a perception of taking care of it? There's a phrase, anybody watching this who's been in the military knows it, and my father was, and told me in various forms of it, shall we say, but prior proper preparation prevents poor performance. This goes into one of those performance issues, and the prior proper preparation, what you're going to do about it. I'm really glad you brought up the ADA point, Bobbi, because that is a huge factor. I remember, again, Blockbuster, I had to retool thousands of buildings because they were not ADA compliant. That's adding in new countertops and then what have you. There's a number you always want to keep in your head, the number 36. Why? Aisles should have 36-inch clearance. Exits need to have 36-inch across access to those doors. Walkways, if you have electrical panels, 36 inches away from, you can't store anything within 36 inches of those panels. So that's a number just to always keep in your brain when you're looking at setting up an office, when you're setting up a business, any kind of storage activity or area, anything like that. Keep that number in mind. But it's very, very important to keep that piece going. And that ties right back into also, again, your emergency action plan. Knowing your business, knowing your building, knowing where your fire extinguishers are. Do your employees, can you, when I walk into the company I work for now, I ask employees, close your eyes, where's the nearest fire extinguisher? You don't want to know how many of them don't know. You don't want to know. It'll keep you up at night or make your hair come out as So the important piece with it though is to talk about it ahead of time. There's no great mystery. There's no great secret. If you talk about it, it takes away the mystery. It takes away the fear. And you can talk about it as just another aspect of your business. As you're putting together a business, I always talk that it's juggling. You're juggling multiple balls, marketing, you're juggling sales, inventory control, all these different things. Safety and security is not the ball. It's just one of them. You can't let it drop. You can't let it drop, but you got to talk about it. And that's where getting these plans set up and going is a critical piece to it. There's many different resources out there to do so. I'm starting to do it a little bit more on my own as far as working for national retailers as well. There's all different kinds of things you can do, but the important thing is you got to do it. that's your rub. You got to get it done. And then after that, you can go forward onto the other more fun things.
What sorts of things would be in a plan like that? So a small business, small, medium, I don't know, anywhere from 3 to, maybe 20 employees, maybe not a huge space, not to the extent of what you're used to working with, but what would be the elements that should be covered in a plan like that? Just the basics. And I'm sure with good Google research, there's probably templates out there, I'm guessing, and some advice you could get outside of, Jason, what he's sharing. But what would be the primary things someone should focus on to include in that?
First, you want to take a look at the physical layout of the building involved. Where are the exits? Where do they exit to? Do they exit into a parking lot? Or do they open up next to maybe a propane tank, something, which may not be a good place to go in case there's a fire. So we want to make sure you're heading in the right direction. So you look at your physical plant. Then you take a look at things like, okay, where do we meet? So I can make sure that everybody's okay. We want to make sure we have a spot that we can go that's not directly in the line of first responders that need to arrive, or if they need to be coming to help you, you want to be out of their way. You want to make sure that you have things like fire extinguishers. You want to make sure you have things like first aid kits that are fully stocked and properly stocked, not just something you grab off the shelf at CVS or Walgreens. There are many companies that offer commercial first aid kits, and when that happens, you need it. There's things in there you need. Depending again on your business, do you have an eye wash station within 15 seconds travel time of where a person is working? Can you get them to that to rinse out their eyes in case there's a chemical piece to it? So a lot of it is very specific to what business you're doing. So you can, again, Google's a great resource, people like myself, what have you. The important thing is that it is addressed, that you do work with it. And I wish there was a global silver bullet for it all. Really, there isn't. It can be very nuanced and very specific. But make sure, starting with this, make sure that you have fire extinguishers, make sure you have a kit, and also make sure your people know where to get to in case of an issue. And that way you can do a head count and make sure your people are accounted for. Because again, there's nothing more important than the safety, the security of your people. Nothing else matters. You can replace product. I looked in my backpack. I haven't got any more Bobbi Baehnes. I've got one, and that's it. That's all I've got. And I'm going to make sure in those situations, we want to protect those other humans.
Excellent. Excellent. So what other things do you have to share with us today besides the plan?
Well, I looked at the whole process of running a business that would need this kind of a plan from a more of an asset protection type of piece than the old school loss prevention. Yes, believe me, I've been one of those guys out there with handcuffs on my belt and grabbing people and chasing bad guys and organized crime and the whole 9 yards. But what's important now to realize for any business, and that's any business, is that the really goal here is to protect the assets of that business, which may be, again, back to people, maybe inventory, maybe it's a truck fleet, maybe it's a company car, maybe it's a laptop, whatever that asset may be, the physical building you're in, all of those things count.
Would you consider intellectual property as one of those assets, or is that a whole different conversation?
That's a whole different conversation, but absolutely,
Okay.
that's huge. I have friends in my line of work who do nothing but intellectual property issues from companies to company, simply because of people, in the tech world especially, people move from all over the place to all over the place.
Yeah.
And they may sign an NDA or a non-disclosure agreement, or you never know what's upside the noggin.
I don't know how many businesses have their employees sign an NDA. I know that, well, we did with our full-time employees. We don't always do it with our contractors. Shame on me. Now I'm thinking about it. Now it's in my head like, oh, darn it. I kind of let that slip. But is that a good practice? So someone comes into your business, whether you have proprietary software or even proprietary processes, like how important is it for a small business owner to have something in place in terms of what it is that they do and how they do it, and even to protect the relationship they have with their clients so nobody's taking them with them? Is that kind of fall under this purview?
Absolutely. Anything that's the whole morphing and growth of the concept of asset protection and moving out of just loss prevention and catching bad guys and making sure my stuff isn't stolen. That's all part of that great growth of the business. Yes, you do want to consider non-disclosure agreements. You might want to consider non-compete clauses for people in certain key positions, so they don't move on to the next one and take your ideas with them. You want to make sure that you've talked about things like insider trading. There was a lovely story just this morning of a BP mergers and acquisitions manager who was terminated because she's working at home. Her husband overheard a purchase, bought some stock, and made about $2 million. Yeah. So now SEC has arrested him, and she lost her job because she had no idea about it. But these are the kind of things you want to think about. And before you think that, it's all doom and gloom and it's all being very pessimistic or negative, it's just being realistic. It's just, we live in a different world now. I can ruin somebody's life with 10 keystrokes.
Yeah, if I chose to. No kidding.
And it's just being ready for those. And also think about your business. Imagine the impact and what happens when that first bad review goes on Yelp. That first bad review hits Facebook, something. I see it all the time. And it's all part of that same conversation of what can you do to protect your assets? And that's what people like myself do. We come in and can help you look at those things that maybe you're just not used to looking at, like Bobbi talked about. We look at the backside of it. We look at, for example, what does your inventory flow look like? How do you bring in and protect those inventory pieces? What do your logistics look like? What does your insurance look like? How much are you carrying enough insurance for problems that may come up? So it's basically, a lot of people used to call me Mr. Worst Case Scenario. And that's a lot of what I do, is I deal with on the people side of worst case scenarios. But again, it's not the thing. It's just a thing. And if you take the mystery out of it, you take the smoke and mirrors away, all you're dealing with is just an easily workable task when you have the right expert helping you out. Like any other part of your business, whether it's accounting, materials handling, whatever, it can all be part of the same thing.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, we've only got a few minutes left because the time goes so fast. See, and you were nervous, and look, we're already like almost finished. Is there anything else that you've got to share with us today? we've got some time, so
Okay. Really, the fact also too, I will share this. I've been doing this from in the private sector for a very long time. A little bit of time in public sector too, in forensics. It's a whole other story, a whole other episode. But if anybody has questions or is interested at all, I was going to hand out my email again. The private side of my consultancy is just starting. My company is JL Security Insights, and it's JLSEC insights@gmail.com. Feel free to ask questions. We can talk. I can be a resource. I'm happy to work, especially with a lot of nonprofits. Being on the board of the nonprofit with Bobbi, I've learned so much from her and how the process works. That I'm just stunned about. Also, I'm stunned by some of the things that the nonprofits don't think about that can come back to bite them. And getting their job done, I think, is so vital for the community. So I'm more than happy to help out in those areas. But really, the only failure of a plan is failure to plan.
yeah.
And if you work it and you think about it and you ask questions, ask questions in the different chambers of commerce. I'm sure have resources as well. All these things are out there to help you succeed. Because when any business succeeds, we all succeed, and it does nothing but help out everyone.
And I will definitely drop that email in the comments. And if anybody's watching live and you've got any questions for Jason, feel free to drop them in the comments right now, and we can try to get to them here before we wrap things up. I'm trying to think if I thought I had some questions. I remember when you were here the other day and you were doing your presentation and you had an acronym and it stuck out so much for me. And I know you were talking really specifically about kind of higher level security, and it sounded like maybe after the fact and interviewing somebody who could be questionably having done something wrong. I just love the whole thing, and now I can't even remember what it is. Would you mind reminding me and just
Sure.
explaining it? Because in that moment, I knew what you were talking about, but I remember thinking, wow, I could apply this to so many other things that seem relevant.
That's part of it. The process of interviewing, there are, there's primary company named Wicklander Zalowski. Anybody may have heard of it. They teach this process, but over the years, again, I took their class back in the 90s and I've been doing interviews ever since. But these pieces there's a piece that I created that helps me organize whether I'm interviewing a suspect, a witness, or interviewing someone to have a job, anywhere in there. I use the word omen because I had a grandmother who was big into omens and things. And I believe in creating my own luck by preparation and by talking to people and getting things set up. So omen, first off, what's the objective of the interview, of the conversation? Is it a job interview? Is it something worse? Okay. Is the question, the M, material? Is it material to what you want to do going forward? Okay.
I love that one, by the way, because I hate questions that don't seem to apply, and then I'm getting distracted. Like I
exactly.
Love that.
Yeah, I do. That's a helpful one. Now, the next one I find very helpful in my line of work. Does the question expand the interview? Does it expand what I'm looking into? And then N, because as you're talking to people, yes, you can follow any flow, any formula you want, but there's also an art to it over time. Is the question natural? Does it fit into the flow of what you're talking about? Are you talking about one thing and then all of a sudden, left turn, we're going to go talk about something else? What is the natural progression? So I use that. That's my terminology for it, and it's been very successful over the years.
I thought it was great. I mean, like I said, I could see that applying to so many places. Plus, it took me right into like Law and Order and police things you see, because I thought, like this really, because when you watch a good interviewer, which I am not, it really, you can really see how productive those conversations can be if they're handled well, and how useless they are if they're not. So I just really appreciated listening to that and thought, wow, this makes sense. And it kind of just, it did. I could see all these cop interviews I've seen on TV and go, oh, there's some really good methods to how you actually get people to feel comfortable, move the conversation along, not being accusatory if that's what the nature of the conversation is, but actually gathering data and getting people to continue, to talk. So you have real knowledge to make good decisions, job interview or whatever else it may be.
And that's why it's so important. What you see in the media when you hear about interviews and you watch the person come in and slap a phone book down and all that. No, that's not the way you do it.
Right.
Again, that's a whole other episode for you. But it's just in how to have a conversation with someone, especially a generation that's used to talking into a screen or communicating 144 characters at a time.
Yeah, I'm sure. Face to face is intimidating enough these days for everybody, right? Anything you're
Yep.
doing like that. Well, Jason, thank you so much for jumping on here today. I appreciate it so much. And like I said, I'm going to drop Jason's email in the comments, so look for that. Probably going to throw this acronym in there too, because I really think it's useful. And if you have any questions that you didn't get a chance to ask live, feel free to throw those in the comments. We'll come back and either answer them there, or you can reach out to Jason directly. But this was really valuable, and it's really made me rethink a plan for other things that we've done. And I know that it is 100% made us rethink how we do things in our nonprofit, to be prepared for situations that may arise. Because if one thing we're short of in every nonprofit is money, and the last thing we need is more exposure and liability to have to spend it. So finding a way to protect ourselves and not have to do that is so important as a business, as a nonprofit, everywhere. So thanks so much, Jason. I really appreciate you being here.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
So I just want to say thanks to everybody for joining us today. If you have any feedback on this episode, or if there's a topic you'd like me to talk about in the future, drop me a comment or get in touch and let me know. And listen, if you have expertise to share or an experience that you feel will help your fellow small business owners, I'd love to have you on the show. So get in touch with us and let's schedule a Friday to get on and have a great conversation. So my goal this year is to really leverage LinkedIn more than I have been. So my LinkedIn account is in the comments. That is a place I'm really trying to spend more time because the platform has evolved so much. So be sure to join me over there, connect with me, follow our Think Big Go Local LinkedIn page, and follow us on all the places. We share lots of great knowledge and are always willing to offer a little bit of advice if you're looking for just some direction in your digital marketing strategies. So I will be back here next Friday at noon. No promises about what kind of condition I'll be in. I'm leaving for New Orleans. And so Friday, I will just be getting back in right before the show, but I'll be here. So join me. We'll probably have some fun stories to share. I hear it's quite the place. Haven't been there. Jason spent a lot of time there. I'm guessing there's going to be some stories.
Nothing I'll admit to in public.
All right, awesome. Well, until then, I hope all of you bosses have a kick-ass weekend and a badass next week, and that you are productive and profitable always. So until next Friday, I will see you and hope you have a great week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.